This conference will now be recorded.
All right, let's call this meeting to order. We can go ahead and do an introduction since we have a couple of folks with us today. So my name is Jennifer and I live in Swenson and I'm the chair of the Citizen Advisory Committee. Gail, you want to go next?
Sure, I'm Gail Hendrickson. I'm the Community Development Director. And for those of you who may not know, Tori Sage took a position somewhere else, so she had her last day here on Monday. And Ian Sisson, who's one of our planners as well, he's on the meeting today, and I'll let him introduce himself, but he's going to be doing backup for me with the Northeast Committee, replacing Tori. So Ian?
Hi everyone, this is Ian Sisson in the planning department. I've been here for about 2.5 years and happy to be joining your group. If you have any questions for me at any point, feel free to ask. Thanks.
Dirk, you want to go next?
Dirk Brown, I'm a member of the committee. I guess my attribute is representing an agricultural background and residing in Brownsmead.
And Cheryl?
Cheryl Johnson, also part of the Northeast CAC, and I am the rep from our local Northeast CAC to the countywide one that meets once a month. And I just wanted to share that I was able to attend the Goal 5 workshop on watersheds, wetlands, scenic and open spaces that was, I think, a week ago. And that was excellent. I was very glad that we had that workshop. I was glad that I was able to attend. And I tried to have a chance to go over my notes. Some of the things that were said in that workshop, I'm going to try and pull in today.
Great, thank you. And Pamela, you want to introduce yourself? You are on mute, so you'll need to unmute yourself. Okay, if you want to say something later on, feel free to jump in, Pamela. Okay, so we've got our meeting summary from September 10th that was pretty brief. Sorry about your technical difficulties, Gail.
No, sorry about the summary. I did actually gather some additional information from Cheryl's report at the countywide. So if you want, I can go back and probably beef that up a bit and bring it back next month.
Yeah, the only thing I really noticed is that we talked about adding goals to both of the areas, and that wasn't mentioned in there at all. Oh, Pamela? Well, she was almost there.
Unmute myself on GoToMeeting. I'm Pamela Matz McDonald. I'm a writer and I do research, and I was really happy to be in this meeting. Thank you.
Great, thanks for the introduction. And thanks for sending your notes ahead of time. So I just wanted to make sure that our goals that we had talked about got written down somewhere and included in updates.
Okay, yeah, the one thing I'm missing is, because I was trying to type and take notes and listen and process, I don't have it written down specifically, the exact wording, and that's why I didn't put it in, because I couldn't find the exact wording.
Okay. Do we need to remember what we wrote and send that in to you, or what should we do?
Yeah, if somebody has notes, I think, Cheryl, you may have drafted some language for that goal, if I remember correctly. If you have any recollection and want to try and reconstruct it and send it to me, then I'll put that in the meetings as well, or the minute summary, meeting summary.
Yeah, I think there was some language that was like, there was something that was in the agenda packet that you had sent out that had some language that we stole from to create the goal. I'll look and see if I can find that too, unless Cheryl, you have it. written down already somewhere. Okay, so public comment and input is next. Pamela, do you want to say anything about the notes that you sent in, or are you just here mostly to listen?
I just want to submit what I wrote. That is very important.
Mm-hmm. Did everybody have a chance to read what Pamela wrote? It's up on the share screen right now. Looks good. Yeah, I think that's a lot of stuff that we're going to be talking about today. Great. Okay, so let's go ahead and dig in to groundwater resources. We're starting with this table 1, looking at the individual policies. Is that the right place to start, Gail?
Correct.
Okay.
And just to give a little overview, I'd like to, as I put in my email yesterday, we spend a lot of time in all of our community advisory groups, citizen advisory groups, talking about why something happened 40 years ago, what was the intent, and I understand that it's important to be able to understand and know what happened in the past so you understand what's happening today and you can help develop policies for the future. But I'd like the committees to start spending a little bit more time looking forward instead of looking backwards. So I was hoping, and we just did this with the Clatsop Plains group this afternoon, that if there were specific policies that are already either in the main plan, main comprehensive plan, or in the Northeast Community Plan, that you want to have a specific discussion about or have questions about or feel need to be revised, let's pull those specifically off these tables, and then whatever is left that everybody agrees with the staff recommendation, we can just approve those by consent. And that way, I think we can spend less time talking about the past and more time thinking about the issues that we're going to be facing in the next 20 years and starting to develop policies to help address those issues. So that's my spiel. Thank you.
That's great advice. I think it sounds really good. I have a couple of notes for this first table. The first one was about policy 2. Talking about the county will coordinate actions with water quality planning and implementation activities carried out by such state agencies. I just wondered if it would be appropriate to include also some nonprofits doing work in this area, like CREST or the Watershed Association. And Chris, for our notes, he suggested adding the Oregon Health Authority too. My next note isn't until the next page on watershed policies. There's just one policy there. Hold on, let me close my door so my kids don't come in just a second. I hear them chattering in the background. I don't want them disrupting the meeting. Should I just keep going? Or yeah. Go ahead,
If you wanted to, we could do this sort of a section at a time. So
cool.
under water resource policies, there's 4 of them.
Mhm.
I definitely want to pull and discuss policy 3. And I like Gail's suggestion that we say up front which ones we want further, deeper discussion on, and then by consensus we go ahead and pass the other ones. So I think that's an excellent idea. And I have some, I think minor comments on policy 1. So for me in this first chunk, I'm good to go on policy 2 and policy 4.
Okay, yeah, and I had that comment about policy 2 about adding a couple other groups, but if you want to say what you want to say about policy 1 and 3, I think now would be a good time.
We should probably see also if Dirk is okay on any of these or wants to pull any of these. And then Gail, clarification, just in order to make progress, do you want us to go ahead and vote on the ones that none of us have any questions or comments about, and then come back and hash through these after we have done that?
Yeah, if we could get through the ones that everybody agrees about first, I think that would be helpful.
Oh, okay.
So I guess if Dirk had no concerns about policy 4, you could go ahead and approve policy 4 right now for the water resources policy goal 5.
Yeah, that one's fine with me.
Fine with me.
Okay. All right, so I guess back to policy 1.
Yeah, Cheryl, you had some notes on that one?
Okay, good. I'm looking at the concept of beneficial use, and under staff recommendations, they list that Oregon DEQ identifies as beneficial uses the following things. I would also like, and I'm not sure about wording or anything, but my concept is the water resource policy should also identify as a beneficial use critical habitat for salmonids. That is not listed according to Oregon DEQ on the side there. So I'm wondering if we can include that. And I'm looking at, one of the presenters at the workshop was Denise Loffman from Crest, and she talked about tidal wetlands. And just very briefly, she reminded us that we have lost 70 to 80% of all of the wetlands in the estuary over time. And she very clearly said that part of the function of those tidal wetlands is that they indeed provide habitat for nursery salmonids, they provide flood control, and they absorb and hold carbon. I'm liking those. They came from Crest. I'm wondering if we can add that wording in there.
Okay, Cheryl, could you repeat the language that you wanted added, please?
I'm not real precise on my language today, so we're just in a sort of a general category. But what Denise Loffman from Crest suggested, that part of the function or the value of wetlands is that they provide habitat for nursery salmonids. They provide flood control, and they absorb and hold carbon.
Okay, is everyone in agreement with the changes Cheryl's recommended for policy 1?
I don't know if there's some redundancy in there because it talks about fish and aquatic life and it talks about fishing. So we have, and then calling out salmonids. So kind of 3 references to the same thing. I don't know if there should be fewer instead of more. That's just an observation.
And Dirk, my thoughts are on the right there where it says staff recommendations, that nice long list and that wording is not actually in the policy, in the Clatsop County policy. So what Gail was just reminding us is that DEQ identifies that list as beneficial. But in our document, Clatsop County, none of those are listed. So at this point in the Clatsop County list, we only have 3 things, the 3 that I just now threw out there.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know that, I mean, putting that sentence at the beginning of the policy, I think it's important. Like, I'm all in support of protecting the wetlands for these things, but I don't know if it's the right place, like if policy 1 is the right place for this to go, or like putting that sentence there doesn't say that like those uses in particular will be protected more than other beneficial uses. But I'm not sure what the solution is there.
You could always take a vote among the members that are present.
And I'm okay with not wordsmithing this. I agree, Jen, that's pretty general. It's not clear where we're going, but we have a lot to cover and I'm okay to just sort of put it in there. And so I went back and looked at some of the work that we did earlier and then how the staff wrote it up and then it went to DLCD. And the staff, I think, has done a very nice job of taking our intent and putting it into wording that works in a document like this. So just speaking for me, I'm okay that this is a bit sloppy right now.
Perfect.
It sort of gives us a direction to go or lists some of our priorities and yeah, sorry, I didn't have time to wordsmith it.
That's a really good reminder that it's not our job necessarily to perfect it, but just to put our interests in here. So that sounds good. I would like to vote to include Cheryl's suggested changes for policy 1. Any opposition? Cool. Policy 2 we talked about, and then policy 3, Cheryl, you said you had some notes on.
Jen, remind me what your recommendation was on policy 2.
To include some nonprofits such as CREST and the Watershed Association. And then Chris Farrar had added Oregon Health Authority too.
How does the Oregon Health Authority make sense?
I think public health concerns around water quality, probably.
Right.
Does that make sense to you, Gail?
Yeah, if we're talking, because this section is talking just generally about water as opposed specifically to groundwater or surface water, so I think that would be appropriate. The OHA also manages certain drinking water systems around the state, community drinking water systems, so they do have a big role in this.
Yeah, I guess my thought is that I was a part of the Napa Water Association, and of course they're beholden to lots of regulations in their implementation of a system. I'm not sure if this helps or if it's just adding another layer. Anyway.
Again, I defer to the consensus of the committee members. So you just tell me what your consensus is.
I would rather not add anything, but that's that's just my opinion.
And I'm okay to add the suggestions that Jen made, so we are not in consensus.
Or you have a consensus, so to speak. Yep, do.
Okay, so back to policy 3.
I have concerns about policy 3 more so than any of the other things that we read through. It talks about municipalities and water districts where they have identified possible conflicts between forest management practice and the maintenance of the integrity of the watershed. I think this is an important issue in Clatsop County. And now when we're working on the comprehensive land use plan, I think this is the time and place to address this. So when there are these potential conflicts, what is suggested is that the county encourages the municipalities and the water districts to work with an organization and to suggest changes in the Forest Practices Act. So then under staff recommendations, the committee is an advisory committee, which means it has no power, no authority. It goes on to say that the committees may review the proposed forest practices rule and identify the need to amend the forest practices rule, or they can propose amended forest practices rule. So to me, it's sort of like, it's sort of say it like, no, I'm not going to do that analogy. I'm trying to think of a different analogy. This is too weak. It's ineffective. And I would like in our Clatsop County comp plan for there to be something stronger and clearer there, saying that we recognize as a priority the maintenance and integrity of watersheds. And again, Carol, Gail and team, I don't have specific wording for a change in policy 3, just that as written, it's a no-go for me.
I guess, Gail, I have a question. Trying to think about the intersection between private property rights and the concern for the watershed that in many cases have more than one use. And so I don't want this to be necessarily used as a lever to prohibit somebody from their lawful use of property, I guess would be a concern.
Okay, so really what it will come down to is less, to an extent, private property rights, but really what is going to overshadow all this will be the Forest Practices Act, which again, as we learned with Goal 4, the county cannot be more stringent or create prohibitions that are more stringent than what are already contained in the Forest Practices Act. I know that several committees have made recommendations along those lines. If you continue to move forward with that, and should the board choose to approve it, which I would not foresee, but if they did, you'd probably be looking at several years of lawsuits. The committee that's set up is a committee set up explicitly for this purpose, to address shortcomings in the Forest Practices Act. We have no control over that committee. But it is a process that is established and has been established for decades to try and work through some of these issues at a state level where they do have the authority to do so. I feel like I just gave a debate answer. Is there a fly on my head?
I took a picture of the fly, but anyway, yeah, I think I'm good then with that. Those suggestions. It sounds like there'll be a lot more deliberation on it. So.
Okay, so I'm sorry, I missed the first part. Stay with Cheryl's recommendation.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to. This isn't. Yeah, it's not the final word, obviously, and those issues will be, I guess, debated at greater length at a higher level. That's out of our control.
And if I would like to go back to some of the info that we got at the Goal 5 Watershed Workshop, and Katie Volke, who is North Coast Land Conservancy, said, and this is a quote, "The comp plan is an aspirational document." And she said that early on when we had a big workshop when we were all still meeting face to face. And I was getting frustrated with how little power we have over things that are as critical to human quality life as watersheds. And she said that then, and it gave me hope. So she said it again in the workshop. The comp plan is an aspirational document. And I like that. I think Gail's right. We don't want to end up in court forever, but we can, and I think we have a responsibility in Clatsop County to write in here what our values are, what our priorities are. And for me, clean and abundant drinking water is a priority. Oh, in fact, Gail, put that in there. Can some of our wording be that clean and abundant drinking water is a Clatsop County priority? She also said that what is written in the land use plan helps to acquire funding when it is listed as a priority. And so I thought that was interesting because they're doing a lot of work with communities and nonprofits, and their North Coast Land Conservancy is doing really beautiful work. And that she was saying to us that it helps with them getting funding, and it helps them to move their work forward when indeed these things are listed as a priority in the comp plan.
That's really important feedback. Thanks. I would totally support the suggestions that Cheryl's making to change this policy 3.
Okay. All right. Are we?
Okay.
I think we have
we're moving
completed
on.
that.
So we're on watershed policies. And I just had a question about this one. I wasn't sure what the administrative rules are here that this is referring to, Gail.
So those are the administrative rules in Oregon. Well, the Oregon administrative rules is section 660-23- I think it's 30 through 140. There is a link, I believe, in your packet to the rules that you can go to and actually read what the state statute said. But what it basically boils down to is that there's a process that you use to identify a water, in this case, a groundwater resource. There's a process that you would use to evaluate it to determine significance, and then it defines groundwater, and I can bring those up if you want to go through those right now, and we can walk through them. But there is a link in your packet. It basically explains how you add a groundwater resource to your comprehensive plan. It's really the process.
Got it. Okay, then I'm fine with the staff recommendation on that policy.
Okay.
You're in the wrong box there.
Yeah, I'm putting it up here too. So.
Oh, okay, cool. Okay. Any other comments on that one? Great.
Just Just a thought that the conversation that we just finished, that clean, abundant drinking water as a priority, may go better under this one, the watershed policies. Gail, do you have an opinion or a thought on that?
You can put it actually in both places if you want.
I like that. Could we also put it here under the watershed policies, please, and thank you?
And this was the one about clean, abundant drinking water?
Correct.
Okay.
I guess my feelings on the issue are that in the area that we're in, through the Napa Water Association, we haven't had any issues. We have clean and abundant water. And I think the issue more so on the coast, where mostly I think the water comes from the east, I guess, through the Astoria watershed, which is actually to our west, but trying to get water through to all the areas from Lewis and Clark to as far west as they can go. There is a scarcity taking place as development occurs and demands are increased. As far as the Northeast, I don't believe we are anywhere near any precipice of having any issues with that.
I think it's still a valid thing to say that we value it. And I do think that in the next 20 years, with the effects of climate change that are coming, we don't really have any way of knowing, or I mean, I don't personally, but from I was reading some stuff last night about climate change and groundwater, and there are like real serious concerns about scarcity of water. And maybe not necessarily in our region, but in regions where there is going to be more scarcity, I think it's going to make more people move up here too. So then there will be greater demand. So I think if we're talking about looking ahead 20 years, it's worthwhile to include. Shall we keep going? Okay, water resources policies. And this is from goal 6.
Again, there are 9 of these, and believe it or not, I have no recommended changes on any of those 9.
Yeah, I don't have any comments on these either.
Yeah, without removing, I think, classic planes in the staff recommendation, which I think makes sense.
Right. So shall we vote to go with the staff recommendations on all of these 9 policies under water resources?
Yes, and I didn't mean to imply that I like them as written, but that I support the staff recommendations. So I'm a yes on those 9 to include the staff recommendations.
Great. Okay, high groundwater and or compressible soils policies. I didn't have any comments on these. The staff recommendation seemed fine to me. Any comments from Dirk or Cheryl?
I thought the staff recommendation was an improvement. You know, I didn't like the idea that it's kind of arbitrary there to have somebody decides which winter day they're going to show up and inspect, rather using the pH as a more concrete form and using available maps, the NRCS maps are. I have behind me some soil maps that, that are, I think, used for planning purposes. So. Holding the Bible upside down.
Oh, great.
See, if we were meeting in person, you would not have been able to show us your maps. This is cool.
Cheryl, did
I
you
was at
have,
LSU, so anyway.
did you have any of these that you wanted to pull for discussion?
No, and in fact, the one comment I did want to make is policy 1, the county shall recognize the development limitations of lands with high groundwater and compressible soils during its planning process. That's Brownsmead. That's my neighborhood. That's Dirk's neighborhood. That is Northeast Clatsop County. Yes. And
I think
staff
we already have,
recommendation.
and I think the driver is more the FEMA flood insurance is more of a, I guess, break, if you want to call it that. And it is exceedingly difficult to build anything in the floodplain anymore. So it probably will never happen again.
Okay, population policy. That one looked fine to me.
I'm fine with it.
Dirk, were you
Okay.
okay with that? I'm assuming.
Yeah.
Okay, general public facilities policies. Chris Farrar sent a note on this one that he says, is there any state recognition of this Nat Creek aquifer? I doubt it, and that expression should be replaced by aquifers in the Nat Creek watershed or aquifers in the Nat Creek area. I'm not aware of anything called the Nat Creek aquifer.
I thought it was interesting, but would support the staff recommendation to remove any reference to it. I think it's kind of a moot point.
Yeah, I wasn't sure why it was called out in particular.
It's probably somebody's whim at the time. It's not used for any.
When can Pamela Matz McDonald make some kind of comment?
We were hoping to wait until the end of the meeting for public comments. Is that okay?
Okay, thank you. Okay, bye.
Thank you.
I would support staff recommendation on that. No. I think you're gonna, not a lot of development pressure on that creek.
This was also a new concept to me, a Nat Creek aquifer, although it was interesting to read that little reference to it. Gail, do you have any knowledge about this underground potential aquifer?
I do not, and I Googled a lot, but I couldn't find anything. And I think I actually sent emails both to Chris Farrar and the Misty Ozier over at Soil and Water District, and didn't have any information. So the comments that Chris provided would probably be more of his response to my question.
I think, in my opinion, that historically that there was a lot of attempts to try to explore those sorts of aquifers, and the water is brackish. Practically, that means it's no-go for drinking use. And so that initially, when the Brownsmead Water District was set up, I think they used something called Rock Creek, which is further up and away from Nat Creek. And so the water is brackish, so it's not really usable for that. It's certainly usable in a habitat context, but as far as drinking water, I don't think it's practical, and it never will be.
Cool. Then I would support the staff recommendation on this policy.
So Jen and Dirk, are we recommending that it be moved to the Northeast Community Plan or that it be pulled all together?
I would pull it.
That's fine with me too.
And Gail, I read the comments on this from Chris, but it was, I'm not remembering them now. And I don't have them in front of me. Is it possible for you to summarize those?
He just said that he would call it aquifers in the Nat Creek watershed instead of calling it the Nat Creek aquifer.
Thank you, Jen. Okay, so he wasn't saying anything substantive about the aquifer itself. It was just a vocabulary thing. Okay. I'm with Dirk and Jen then. I'm fine to pull it all together.
Okay, policies and district agreements. Sounds fine to me.
This one is fine with me.
You too, Dirk?
Yes.
Okay, beaches and dunes policy.
All the beaches and dunes.
What did you say?
Move we eliminate all the beaches and dunes. I don't think we should have.
I'm fine with the staff recommendation on this.
Yeah, that's not in our, area so much.
It's not, yeah.
Yeah, and that's how I feel. I do not have knowledge or expertise in beaches and dunes, so to go with the staff recommendation is fine.
Okay. And then we have some recommended actions. And these are both Clatsop Plains, so I don't have anything to say about them.
Yeah, that's where the pressure is.
I agree with Jen. They're both Clatsop Plains. I don't have an opinion there. And I just wanted to say to Gail, thank you for the work to go through all of the goals. We're looking at things in goal 11, goal 14, goal 18 that have to do with water, but we're dealing with them right here all in one place in a way that seems real logical and makes sense to me. Thank you for doing that work.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you.
All right, so we're moving on to table 2. This is the Northeast Community Plan. Surface water and groundwater quality policies. I don't know that
I have a question.
removing the policy seems fine. I don't know why we would have it in our community plan if it's already in the comp plan.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to ask. Gail, is this already written into the countywide comp plan?
Yes, it is.
So I'm in favor of the staff recommendation.
I agree.
I'm in favor. I agree.
Okay, Nat Creek aquifer policies. Again, I just don't really know why the Nat Creek aquifer in particular is being singled out here. I don't know that we need to keep any of this.
And Jen, is it possible for you to pull up Chris's comments on either of these? Again, I read them, but they're not stuck in my head, so.
He wrote for policy 1, he wanted the wording to be activities which have the likelihood of and potential for contaminating aquifers in the Nat Creek area shall not be permitted. But I think that that's already covered in the general comp plan. I just don't know why you would put that in, like, I don't know why Nat Creek is in here.
Good.
Because they're
And he didn't have,
they're already all covered.
and he didn't have comments on policy 2.
What's this other? He says,
No.
recommend removing the words beyond established acceptable levels because there are no acceptable levels of contamination.
Yeah, those were both policy 1 comments.
That's what it looks like.
Yeah.
So I would be fine removing both of these.
I'm fine.
I'm fine with removing both of them.
Okay, and then public facilities and services policies. Chris Farrar had a comment that lake is not the correct term to use here, that he would use aquifer or reservoir instead, a large underground lake. But I also am not sure that it's necessary to include it. And I mean, I don't think it says anything that isn't already covered in. I mean, I guess I don't really know about the basalt ridge from Napa to Westport.
I think that's honestly where we got our Napa water from. Our
Okay.
wells in the basalt ridge.
Do you think this is important to keep then, Dirk?
Whatever the staff, I don't have a problem with it. It can be retained.
Yeah, I think if it's supplying the Napa Water District, I think it's important that we should probably keep it. It says it's for future growth as opposed to expanding surface water. So I think that helps support the Napa Water District's mission.
So can we just incorporate Chris's comment about changing lake to aquifer or reservoir? Great, thank you.
If that makes technical sense, I guess, Gail, that would be my question. Or
if anybody would know, it would be Chris about technical sense. So I rely on him actually for technical advice.
And I'm in favor of retaining it with the vocabulary change.
Okay, then we are moving on to table 3. And this is for new policies.
Okay, so this was just put in as a sample to explain how the worksheet should be used. You can ignore it, you can support it, you can do whatever you want with that one, but it's really your chance now to talk about what issues you see in the next 20 years that we need to address.
I like the proposed new policy. I would support adding that in.
I also support putting something in to address climate change, and I think this wording is good. I think we should also be talking about wildfire, but I don't have any proposed language. Yeah, that's all on that one for me.
Just to throw out something a little obscure. A while ago, I was doing a little research and talked about tectonic uplift. I'm not sure to what degree. I'd heard that Warrenton, they'll have to redo things as the plate tectonics rise in the lower Columbia River estuary. I don't know if that's an issue or not. I did read some scientific, in-depth stuff that was over my head that talked about that. So I don't know if things would actually dry out, and I don't know if that, it may not be an issue. I think Cheryl's point of what wildfire, obviously when we had the weather we had in the last month, would be of grave concern potentially. I mean, we're lucky that nothing caught on fire. So I think that's exceedingly relevant.
Okay, so with wildfire, we'd want to look at, obviously there's damage to forest lands, right? Damage to property.
Yeah, the urban, I guess the interface between, everybody wants to live in I don't know if urban is the right word, but residential, urban, residential interface, I guess. Residential forest interface. Oh.
Okay. So
I wonder about, well, it's the relationship to the water resources. I guess I don't know enough to know, like, if our drinking water. I mean, I'm super concerned about wildfire too, but I'm just not sure that this is the right place to put it.
Yeah, that's a good, I don't know. Oh, that's an excellent point.
yeah, there was an article, I think, either in the New York Times or Washington Post, just in the past couple of days with all the fires, the toxins that have seeped into the drinking water systems in these different communities.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Yeah, and on a larger issue that, a lot of the weather we get, at one point, reading a climate blog and the basically the coal dust from East Asia settles on maybe the West Coast, which I don't know if that could potentially create some issues, like we're drinking the air over East Asia. I don't know. That could be, I don't know if that's an issue potentially in 20 years from now, if CO2 emissions are something that could hurt our drinking water.
One of the things that the speaker again at the Watershed workshop, who was with the North Coast Watershed Councils, she talked about the need for a watershed assessment document. Gail, is that what CREST is doing for us? Is that different than what CREST is doing for us? And if they're different, can you talk about both a watershed assessment document and what CREST is doing for the county planning?
Yeah, so CREST, the two items are going to be very different. The work that we're having CREST do is specifically related to just wetlands and riparian corridors. So to help develop the definition, so we have a clear framework that we're working with in terms of riparian corridors, and then to do some work to update the Duncan Thomas report that was done in 1982 that identified the significant wetlands around the county, and to possibly expand that, because that report was very heavily centered on Clatsop Plains. So we're working to expand that as well. I don't have enough technical knowledge to tell you specifically what a watershed assessment document is. I think I put a link somewhere in some document to one of the committees where there is a watershed assessment report that I linked to, and it basically is just taking a very specific geographic area and looking at the factors that are influencing it, the water quantity, the water quality. That's my general understanding.
And what she was saying is that every watershed needs to be updated, and obviously they need to have funding for for that. And one of the things that you asked us to do was to think about water policies going forward for 20 years. So this concept of having a watershed assessment document makes sense. So maybe we can, again, if this is an aspirational document, maybe we can write that as one of our goals in Clatsop County.
Okay, so just to kind of fill that in a bit, so this would not be something that the county would necessarily undertake, just to kind of put that caveat up front. We do have the North Coast Watershed Association that covers most of the watersheds that are in the county, and then there's a couple of separate ones. But that would be something that maybe the county could help with, I don't know so much with funding, and I don't know what kind of technical expertise, but maybe to help support them in their grant efforts. I'm trying to think of something that's aspirational, that's realistic, as opposed to saying that the county will undertake these assessments for all the watersheds, because we won't have that capacity to do that.
I think to your point, I've been thinking relative to the Napa Water Association and what you said in terms of the county providing support. Should some entity like the Napa Water Association apply for a grant, and the county could support them in that effort, and that would that might make sense to me.
Good. I think we're going in the right direction. So thank you for that clarification, Gail, that the county won't do it. But again, maybe we can use those aspirational words. So maybe we're going to write something about Clatsop County values and supports watershed assessment documents being updated. And then it stays in that aspirational category. But then, as they were saying, if it is a value for Clatsop County, then that helps them get funding from other sources.
Yeah, this all sounds good to me. I would think, I mean, I don't know how much you need us all to fill in on this right now, Gail, but the way that first new suggested policy is worded about monitoring impacts and developing strategies to mitigate the impacts, I would think the same thing for the wildfire and maybe tectonic uplift, all of, that kind of wording for the issues that we've talked about.
Yeah, I don't know. I think we got some great ideas. I don't, like going back to my tectonic thing, I don't know how, or the emissions from East Asia, how relevant that is for this, but those are just more general comments, I guess.
Yeah, I think it's valuable to at least put in here, and then if the staff decides that it's bogus, they can take it out later.
We put in everything that gets suggested, and then through the process, as it goes up the chain of review, things may get taken out, things may get reworded, new things may be added, but this is your chance to throw everything out and see what sticks to the wall.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I won't hurt my everything that I've said is entirely irrelevant. It won't hurt my feelings if it's deleted, so that's fine.
Yeah, the only other thing that we haven't quite touched on directly is like sea level rising, since we're so close to the ocean. If that, I don't know if that's going to affect actual houses. And being in the Northeast, I guess we're a little further removed from the actual ocean, but we're still tidally influenced, and also more aquifers becoming brackish is maybe a concern there. So
yeah, my point about tectonic uplift would be kind of a counterpoint to that.
Oh, okay. I guess I don't really know what that is at all. So
basically, things are rising. It's more of a geological phenomenon, and it's my understanding that in survey studies, and this may be more hearsay, like in Warrenton, that they have to adjust their survey markers because things are being pushed up.
I see.
While we're throwing things at the wall to see what sticks, that's my 2 cents.
And Gail, can we pause here because we're doing a great job on our timing and on staying on topic here. Can we pause and just talk for a minute about process? So you just talked about that we as the local groups are putting in our aspirational document. And then the next step, I think, is that it goes to the county-wide group, which I'm part of. And then I understand that things are also now beginning to go to the Clatsop County Planning Commission, and that it's already gone to DLCD and that they made comments on, is it the first 4 goals? Can you just update us on where we're at in that process?
Yeah, so we sent the goals 1 through 4, the first drafts off to DLC for a courtesy review, and they provided comments back. Just because the Planning Commission hasn't been looped into this process at all, we sent those DLCD draft comments to the Planning Commission for them to review, not to make a final decision or recommendation on, but to give some input on. We will be bringing those draft goals to the CACs, but I don't have a time frame for that right now. What we're doing right now as staff is we're trying to shrink the process back down time-wise to keep us more focused on the future-looking policies and not spending so much time dwelling on the past. And then for the countywide CAC, I put up an item that I'm working on for their agenda that should have gone out today, but it's going out tomorrow, where we've taken all the historic and cultural resource recommendations from the different CACs, put them into a table, and we're going to let them look at all the different recommendations from the planning areas, consolidate or recommend or somehow create synthesize all that and put it into a recommendation that would then eventually go to into the draft policy, which would go then to the Planning Commission at some point. So we're adjusting the process as we work through this as staff, trying to respond to the feedback or of the different committees and trying to make it more streamlined, trying to cut back the time a bit so we're not extending it by 6 months, and trying to pull more policies for all the goals together like we did tonight, not just focusing on what's strictly in goal 5 for water resources, but seeing how everything interrelates throughout the plan. And the goal is that by staff doing a little bit more work up front and putting together all the recommendations and doing that background legwork, where we can hopefully come in and just kind of do a consensus vote on a lot of those, that we can just shorten the time frame up. So I don't know if that completely answered your question, Cheryl. Part of the answer is that we're still tweaking out the process as we go, or tweaking the process as we go, just to respond to life and how everybody is handling the workload and things like that. So
that was great. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
So it's a work in progress. So
always.
We appreciate your patience.
Okay, does anybody have anything else they want to add to table 3 here for new potential policies? We've done a pretty good job. Okay, so then that's the end of our action items. Is that right, Gail? Okay, so we can move back to public comment and input. Yeah, I see we have maybe another person has joined us.
Can you create some kind of limitation on the time, 3 minutes or 4 minutes, unless somebody has a question? So
sure. Open to 3-minute comments if anybody would like to say anything.
Hi, I'm Pamela Matz McDonald. I think the value of the County 2040 plan is in showcasing the values of the various communities within the Clatsop County. And I think that you are doing a great job. I think that the basalt layer is doing a great job of doing watersheds. And I'm concerned about the Nat Creek thing. There's a Nat Creek fish hatchery, and I don't know if it's connected to the Nat Creek watershed, but salmonids are growing in the Nat Creek fish hatchery. Can somebody answer that question? I didn't know.
Yeah, it's part of the watershed. It's the watershed's considered the Nikolai Wikiup watershed. The hatchery is upstream of Nat Creek.
So the Wikiup watershed is part of what supplies the fish hatchery at the Nat Creek fishery. Is that correct?
I would say that when the watershed groups that I used to attend were active, the Wikiup watershed encompassed Nat Creek.
Okay. Thank you very much for.
You're muted, Pamela.
She said thank you very much.
Oh, that was it. Okay.
Yeah, that was it.
Great. Is there any other public comment? Cool. Well, I think that that is just about it then for our meeting. We were super efficient tonight, you guys. Good work. Thank you, Gail. Thank you so much for helping us streamline this meeting process a little bit. It's everything you're doing is very helpful.
Okay. Yeah. If you're good with this, we'll keep this up until we need to tweak it again. So.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Jen, I had just a couple of things to say.
Go ahead, Sarah.
One is I really appreciate our group, the Northeast CAC. We make good use of our time. People are focused and ready to go. So that's just I really appreciate the people who have made the commitment to be on this committee and showing up and doing the work. And we don't have 5 tonight, but last month we did, and we usually do. And I personally will miss the loss of Victoria as part of the staff. I'm sorry to hear that. So tell her we will miss her. And thank you, Gail, and all of the staff for listening to concerns and frustrations with the process and for adapting and changing. I thought our group is usually very efficient, but I thought this was very nice for us to go through and say what we all have consensus on, and then to go ahead and spend time and focus on the things that we need to talk about, the things that are important to us, and to give us time and space to hash out that language. So thank you for helping us to look forward and not getting too bogged down looking backward. I appreciate it.
Thank you. You're very welcome.
And Gail, could you just remind us what material we're going to be covering at the next meeting? Are we still on goal 5, or are we?
Yeah.
Was this?
We're still on goal 5, and I think I closed my thing out. We are looking at wildlife habitat, and I think we're going to go back to mineral and aggregate as well.
Great. Okay, thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Yeah. See you next month.